Good morning, gamers, and welcome back to GM Academy with grumpy old GM John Clement coming to you from the game shop's basement. Today we're gonna dabble in a little new territory here. We still come back from time to time and do those promotions of free stuff and pay what you want stuff. We still come back from time to time and add to the NPC Rolodex, still come back from time to time and promote the book club readings, still come back from time to time and talk about the different styles of play styles. But I did promise people a video on more examples of simulation and emulation. So there is just so much content to get out to you, but I just couldn't wait on this one. So we're gonna kind of start something new today. And I do these almost every day, so we will get all this information out to you. I promise, So but today I want to introduce Boondock. And this is, idea that came to me. I was thinking about, students and YouTube subscribers and players and just people out there in the audience, what's some really good stuff that addresses the questions that people have for me and the questions that people want answered and what people say their needs are in gaming. And so I thought about Boondock. And Boondock is a starter campaign area that I wrote in the 90s when I was in college, and I have used it over the years. This will work anywhere, and I'll explain how this works anywhere. I have used this in D&D, I've used it in Star Wars, I've used it in Star Trek, I've used it in Farscape and Stargate, I've used it in Rift's Phase World 3 Galaxies, I've used it in comic book universes that were not DC or Marvel. I have, just used it in any setting. It will fit. There are little tweaks to make it fit anywhere. Like, for example, if you're running it in Star Wars, the bartender's going to be a Wookiee. But that's not going to happen if you're running it in Marvel superheroes, If you're running it in Marvel superheroes, the bartender might secretly be a shape-shifting Skrull. But you see, you can just change out the lore. The setting works because the setting has all the tropes that you need for a starter setting to start a campaign. Even for D&D, it does not have to be in space on another planet, although it could be these days because Spelljammer is kind of popular. But you could set this on a D&D world map or Pathfinder map. But how Boondock came about is when I was a teenager in the 80s, I gamed with a lot of guys from Whiteman Air Force Base, and they were very, very much into playing Mech Warrior. And Mech Warrior is a role-playing game where you actually play a mech pilot from the Battletech universe or the Battletech franchise. And I was not into this, but the guys were. And these guys, I was growing up gaming with them. They were kind of like my role models. We played D&D. D&D was our main thing. But occasionally they would play Mech Warrior. And these guys, there were Battletech novels. And these guys would drive big trucks, and I would see the Battletech novel that they were reading on the floorboards or on the passenger seat or on the dashboard or something. And these guys would talk about House so-and-so and House such-and-such. And they actually knew all like the Battletech lore and stuff. I didn't really give a flying crap. But I was going to play with these guys. And so I made a Mech Warrior character. And they asked me where I was from. And I knew nothing about their lore and everything. So right there on the spot as a teenager, I just said, well, I'm from the planet Boondock. And it's just so far out there. It's just in the boondocks, so they called it Boondock. And everybody laughed and thought that was funny. And in real life, I was a kid compared to them anyway, because I was in the Battletech Mech Warrior group. I was like one of the only teenagers, and the other guys were like adult military men. And they're like, okay, kid, you're from Boondock. And so that's kind of how that happened. Well, so the idea of Boondock was that it's just some planet that's so far out there that it's not going to conflict with existing lore. And existing lore is not going to conflict with Boondock. And then in college, was starting a campaign, and I just thought about Boondock. And so in these next few videos, I'm going to kind of show you how I wrote Boondock, the different points to Boondock. I'll get a map of Boondock up on our website, and we will get, and I'll show you how you can plug, how Boondock checks all the boxes for a good starter area. So by starter area, you can start a campaign there, and just to give you some pointers here in this first video, a starter area needs to be big enough that there's stuff to explore. You know, you don't want the party to feel trapped. Like, for those of you who've played MMOs or know about MMOs, computer games, a lot of MMOs will have like a starter area where you're supposed to learn how to, how to use the controls and how to use your abilities and get used to your character class and blah, blah, blah. And the starter area can feel kind of fenced in and restrictive. So Boondock is like a starter area, but you want it to be big enough that it doesn't make people feel constrained and constricted like a starter area in an MMO. And there needs to be something in it for everyone. So for instance, in Star Wars, in Boondock Star Wars, you're going to need something there for Force users, something there for non-Force users. You're going to need something there for people who are into bounty hunting. You're going to need something there for people who are into smuggling. You're going to need something in there for people who are into political intrigue. So you want something that's going to hit all the notes of Star Wars. And the same thing for D&D, Marvel superheroes. And a lot of these tropes can kind of be interchangeable. So, for example, in Star Wars, which is one of the first places I used Boondock for, there's a blind Jedi there, and her name is Cassandra. And the reason she's blind, depending on the time period that you're running Star Wars in, when she was a little girl, her parents were disappeared by the government, by the Empire or whatever. And as a little girl, when she was lunging for her parents, no, don't take my mommy and daddy, she got smacked right in the face, right in the eyes with the butt of a stormtrooper's gun so hard that it damaged her ocular cavities, and so she's blind. And even though in Star Wars there's the technology to fix people's eyes or even give them, replacement cybernetic eyes, she was just too poor. And later on, she kind of bloomed and blossomed and had the Force, and that kind of helped her. But the idea is that because she's blind, she's not going to take over the player character's spot. So if a player character becomes her apprentice, then it answers that plot hole of, well, if your master's so great, why didn't your master come do this? Because, see, the player character is supposed to do things because they're the player character. And so if you give the master some limitations, then that gives you a reason in the story why the master just doesn't come and do everything for the player character. But Cassandra doesn't have to be a blind old hermit Jedi. She could maybe be a blind old hermit wizard or whatever. We have a Dark Sun table now. You could make her a blind old psionicist. So whatever sort of mystical thing the characters are into, she could be a blind old warrior woman monk. But it hits that mystical trope for whatever mysticism your characters may be into in your particular game. And then, so this is how you can like mix and match tropes and make this fit any franchise. So in the video is already over 9 minutes long. I want to make sure I got some examples to give you some idea of how this Boondock setting works. And I will kind of continue with it as we go, continue giving you information on all the other stuff that we share on this channel. If you like this content and stuff, and if you benefit from it, then there's a Patreon down below where you can join one of our students and get personal calls from me or other grumpy old GMs I work with. And we can focus on your GMing, whether you want to GM professionally like I do, or whether you just want to step out and improve GMing in your community, at your local game store, college group, high school group, whatever. We want to address the GM crisis they tell us about. But yeah, and if you want to game with us, we got seats open. There's information about that down below too, or just hang out in our Discord community. So in the meantime, I'm looking forward to sharing Boondock. I'll get a map ready for you guys. We'll get the map on the internet. And in the meantime, and so I want to give you an example of like how I actually write stuff that I've written, why I write it that way, and why it has been a hit with people. For people have loved Boondock for decades. And instead of just having Boondock loved and shared by the people that have been at my personal table over the years, I thought, hey, let's put that out there. Let's really start answering people's questions about how different ways to write stuff, different thought processes you can go through as you come up with stuff. In the meantime, I'll see you around the gaming table.